A new study by a free market-oriented think tank found that New Mexico has the highest percentage of public sector and government contract jobs. I'm going to go back to this contract job thing in the country. Meanwhile, New Mexico was the only state to show declining home values in the last year, and the Interim Jobs Council released a report this week that New Mexico needs 160,000 jobs in the private sector in the next decade in order to rebound from this recession. And Rob, they're actually talking about those jobs getting us back to 2007 levels, not even growing beyond where we should be now.
Right.
It's pretty daunting, 160,000 jobs. What disappointed me about the interim committee report is when we get to the how part, I didn't really see much. They had some ideas, but it really wasn't marching orders like, that's it, we're going in that direction.
Yeah.
How do we get there? It's a difficulty.
That is an incredible question.
Yeah.
And I mean, you've got a lot of different people that are stumped about this. I mean, you can say things like, well, we need to improve the education. Well, again, it's easy to say, but what do you do? How do you get there? As far as this story, the study that was done by the people at the Mercatus Center, there were a couple of things that when I saw that story and I wrote about it, I wasn't really that surprised. I was a little bit surprised that New Mexico was number one. In their dependence.
Who would you have expected?
I thought we'd be like in the bottom five.
Sure.
Because and we've talked about this before. Especially when we had the government shutdown last month or a couple of months ago. New Mexico is very vulnerable to problems with the federal government. What I found most disturbing, though, was later on in that study they had another chart. Where they took a look at the statistics from 2007 and 2012 to see how many private sector jobs were gained or lost in that 5-year period. Now, I think policymakers in New Mexico have known that we've had too much reliance on the federal government. But the fact that New Mexico lost 5.8% private sector jobs between 2007 and 2012 tells me that we've become even more dependent, or we haven't been able to grow the pie enough in the private sector. So now if the government does go through a shutdown, another round of sequestration, or if it ever happens for the government to really rein back spending, New Mexico is going to get hit hard. So we really need to make sure we're not the bug on the windshield.
That 5.8% you referenced, Laura Sanchez, that's 34,000 jobs, private sector jobs that were lost in this state between 2007 and 2012. And what really got me inside that piece as well was Albuquerque was sort of holding okay. And it seems like there's a gap growing between the rest of the state and what we're able to do here in Albuquerque. Did you have that sense as well? Because some things are working here. We've had job growth here for quite a few months now, but
well, and if you look at the particular sectors that are growing, I think there's some that are doing better than others. And I think that also is part of what we're potentially seeing as we move forward, is that there's certain sectors that may do better than others. And if you look at the types of jobs also, that changes. And I mean, one of the areas that I'm particularly interested in and that I work in is renewable energy, the renewable energy sector, which has been able to grow jobs over the last 10 years, based on where they were. And they were a very small industry, but they've been able to grow jobs, and they're typically higher paying jobs. So that's one of the issues that we've seen changing. But healthcare certainly is another area where potentially things could grow. But to add 160,000 new jobs, we're talking about massive changes in order to set things into place to move forward like that. And many of those jobs, just because of the way we're structured here with the federal government, but also state government is a huge employer. So that has effects also on the economy.
Marisa, what struck me in the study was what Rob mentioned, the amount of contract jobs. We ranked second behind Virginia. They had like a little over 10% or federally contracted jobs, but 7.7% here in New Mexico. So that brings our true number of people somehow associated with government work to 31 some odd percent. And I just found that interesting that contract work is so big here. You know what I mean? And this is part of the challenge Laura's talking about. How do you uncork folks who have had reliable federal contracting jobs? You sort of feel like an entrepreneur, but you're not really, because you're still sort of connected. Do you know what I mean? How do you turn that into a risk culture? And people are willing to go out there and say, I'm going to mortgage my house and I'm going for it. This is going to work. See what I mean? That's what we need to get to.
So I think this study hit me on a particularly visceral level because, I lost my job about a year ago. A lot of my friends have lost their jobs. We're looking for jobs. We're smart, talented, educated people. We need to find a way to make a living. And one of the things that really struck me was that for like 7 years, I did candidate endorsement interviews. And that is where you sit down with every candidate for 30 minutes or an hour and you talk about what are their top issues and how do they plan to address them. And I would say that universally for 7 years, whether you're talking about city council, county commission, state level positions, everybody is talking about jobs. Going back a long time. So my question is, and I think as journalists and as citizens, we need to start asking this question, what happened in those proposals? Did they get implemented? Are they working or are they not working? And what are the gaps in those plans? So where does it go? Where does it go from when you're talking to me because you want to get elected to a public office to when you're actually in public office? What happens to all that new job creation energy that I've been hearing so much about? And then to get the study and say jobs, not so much, they're going down. We got to fix it. We got to fix it. Sure. What's going to happen? What practically is going to happen?
That's a good point. Practically, I love that little riff you got going there. That was solid. The practicalities of the matter, as Marisa DeMarco just mentioned, again, fair enough that nobody has the turnkey answer. No one's expecting that. But there should be a group discussion. Wouldn't you think, like a community-wide discussion where everything's on the table, there's, no idea is bad. You know what I'm saying? It takes
absolutely.
leadership to get that going, though, doesn't it?
It does take leadership. And while I've been very critical of, different administrations about, their lack of real economic development.
Right.
I have two comments on this topic. One is the small business that's already here. Everybody's focusing on attracting business out here. What about helping the folks that are here in the state, that have been here, that have survived? Address that. I think you'll get a lot of people behind whatever the program is. Right. The second thing is that this issue didn't happen overnight. Right. There was a time that everybody in New Mexico was praising that we have so many government jobs, and that was the opportunity that everybody had to really diversify. We had the solid base. But nobody did anything. Right. We went after the low-hanging fruit, the easy, non-technical jobs, when we had all the opportunity to grab the technical jobs. So while we curse, the federal government is killing us with all these federal jobs, we're tied into it. We didn't do anything when we had the opportunity, and that, to me, is what is very frustrating.
Now, the administration, Rob Nikolewski, says their tax proposal for 2015 is going to be a game changer. Aren't we at a point where it's not about taxes anymore? Isn't it clear, it seems to me, that private sector job growth has to be something other than taxation to get things moving? And what can this administration do beyond taxes to get something going? I personally don't see anything solid coming out of Santa Fe here.
There also has to be, the government can try to come up with some ideas, but really this is a private sector issue. And there has to be some stimulation on the part of the private sector. I've always been an advocate for trying to attract blue-collar factories to come here. There's a lot in Michigan and places like that, and there you could say, come here to New Mexico. We've got sunshine 300 days out of the year. We would not. One of our weaknesses is lack of or a number of people who have higher education degrees. But at least if you've got a blue collar job, a high school diploma, you can get a job at a factory.
That's right. And be real with our cards on the table and work with it.
And get people into the middle class.
That's right. There you go.